Hello everyone and welcome to another snapshot video, this time the first snapshot video for the fall drop, and today we will be reviewing snapshot version 25W31A. Now I want to come out the gate in love with you guys. I have already recorded this snapshot video, but my microphone audio was not picked up, so I gotta do a little bit of a re-record. So you can see everything already plays down, but it's fine. We'll get to it as it comes. Now, moving on for that, I wanted to quickly apologize for not having a snapshot video out last week. I was feeling under the weather, and I would have loved to talk about the shelves and stuff, but I thought that I may as well just wait till this week and quickly throw them in at the start. So we'll go through a quick rundown of everything I missed last week, and then we'll cover everything that's new this week. You can go ahead and skip to that if you want. I'll have the bookmark, or I'll have the chapters in the description, as well as you can probably see them on the video bar as is. Without further ado, let's get into it. We have a lot to cover today. First of all, last week we had the addition of the new shelf block. There's one for each wood type, and I think they actually look really cool. And they do have a few functional uses, but first I want to talk about the obvious use in the room. These are basically vertical slabs. I've seen pillar designs using these things, and as you can probably imagine, if there's a pillar here, it would look so cool with these on. But I'm lazy, and I don't want to build that right now. These are going to be game-changing when it comes to building blocks. But that's not their functional use. So they will look very nice for interiors. These guys do have two functionalities. One can be seen whenever they are not powered, which is their basic one, in which they can be used basically as item frames. They can hold up to a stack of 3 different items. So there can be a stack of lime dye, green dye, and cyan dye here. And yeah, that's basically what they do. They hold items, and you can swap items out. If I get a lever here, we can swap this orange dye out with a lever, and it'll just take its spot. It can get a little more interesting though if we go ahead and power all of this. They change from a simple glorified item frame into a hotbar swapper. So if we go ahead and place this lever where this red dye is, it'll take my hotbar and swap it. Oops, with that stuff. And I can also swap it back if I want. Now, the reason why it takes from these guys instead of taking from these guys, like you would think with my hotbar, with how my hotbar is situated, is that you can only have 3 shelves connected to each other. And these 3 are connected, which means these 3 are connected, which is why when I click this red dye, it connects to these 3 and not these 3. That's a nice little functionality if you want to have like a quick hotbar swapper. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, moving on quickly from the shelves, we have new dye textures, which I think these look absolutely amazing. These were changed to help with accessibility because some of the old dyes, mainly the magenta, the pink, and the purple, which you guys are seeing on screen now, used to have the same textures just with different colors, which could be an issue if someone's colorblind. They may have a difficulty determining which is which. Which is why they have all been given unique textures, although it's not entirely perfect. Some of these do look pretty similar, which is unfortunate. I think the light blue and the normal blue could do with a bit of changing, but I think these are definitely a massive improvement, and I also love the uniformity with them when it comes to the new paper underneath. They just look so good. I don't know, I love these new dye textures, especially since the magenta one looks like Ditto from Pokemon. Am I reading too deeper into this? Or am I right? Anyway, that's it for the shelves that dies. There's one more thing I got to talk about from last week, and that is to do with the copper golems, a feature that was teased in the mob vote whenever they were actually being voted on and lost. The developers said that once the copper golems were fully oxidized, they would become statues, which is what was added last week. New pig, do you mind? It's fine, he's very interested in the copper statues. These guys were added in last week's snapshot. Once the copper golem gets to the fully oxidized stage, it will eventually become a statue, at which point they'll be immobile and they'll become a block, and you can move them wherever you like. You can change their positions. There's 4 different positions. If you just right click them, boom, changes to 4 different positions. You have the normal standing position, the sitting position, the running position, and the jumping position. I think they look very nice. And it is important to note that each position does give off a different redstone signal. The normal standing position gives off a redstone signal of 1. The sitting position gives off a redstone signal of 2. The running position gives one of 3. And the jumping position gives one of 4. So you can do some nice combination stuff with these guys, it looks like, if you so choose. Also, these guys are copper blocks, so if you want, you can wax them and also unwax them if you so choose. And if they're fully copper like this and not oxidized at all, and you right click them, they'll come back to life. There is a way back for these guys. Also, if you wax the living copper golems, they won't deoxidize, and if you wax the living weathered copper golem, they will not turn into the statues. So you can still keep your copper golem of choice without worrying about it dying on you. And that is about it for last week's changes. So now let's get into the new stuff this week. There's a few more things we gotta talk about. First of all, you have the new lightning rods variants. There's now a lightning rod variant for each copper stage, and they are copper blocks, so you can wax them. These two are already waxed, and you can also unwax them. And if you don't like these new variants, you can always take them back to the normal unweathered version. That's about it for these guys. Pretty simple, but I think the oxidized lightning rods will be very nice for builders who like this palette. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it the entire time it's been up here on the top left of my video, but you can now have an FPS counter in game without any mods, completely vanilla. And that is thanks to the F3 menu changes. As you can see, this F3 menu is really empty right now. And that's because I have already gone through and customized it a little bit for the previous recording. You can customize it yourself by hitting F3 and F5, and it will bring up this menu, which has a ton of options or a ton of information that you can set to 3 different options. Off means you will never see it. Even if you hit F3, it just won't be there. So for instance, biome, can't see any biome. However, the next setting in F3, it's pretty simple. If you select in F3, you'll be able to see that setting in F3 right here. Minecraft planes. What is going on with my GPU? I'm terrified. And then you can also set a setting to always, and at which point, if you set always, it'll be like the FPS counter there. It'll always be visible even without the F3 screen on. It's pretty simple. There's also some debug renderers down here, in which you can change them to in F3 or always if you turn them all on. It includes stuff like chunk borders, hitboxes and stuff. But if you have all of them on, it tanks performance. Help me. Oh my god, no. Anyway, for good video quality, we're gonna go ahead and turn all of that off. Before we move on to the next thing, there are also 2 profiles. The default profile, which is just normally what it's like before you change any customizations, and the performance profile, which is there to mainly make the F3 screen less resource intensive. For all those who may struggle when having the F3 menu open, you have this option for you. Do keep in mind though, if you choose either of these profiles, it will erase any customizations you have done to any of these things in the menu, so be careful with that. There have been a few spawn egg changes this week. If you are in peaceful mode, hostile mob eggs will now have a tooltip that says disabled and peaceful, and if you try to spawn them, they'll do the same thing they've always done. I do believe they're just not supposed to spawn at all, like not a flash or anything, but they don't seem to be doing that for me. Don't know if that's a bug or if it's a user error. Could be either, honestly. I do not know how to visualize this next thing for you guys, but there have been some important spawn chunk changes. So I believe the last time they touched spawn chunks, they went ahead and reduced them they reduced them into a 3x3 area around spawn. So there's only 9 chunks loaded at all times around spawn. They've gone ahead and changed them again, and they're gone. They were removed entirely, which is fine. Mojang removed them because they incurred a performance and memory cost, and they no longer were useful for their original purpose, which was making sure those chunks were loaded whenever players logged into the world. And with this news, we have unfortunately lost a beautiful game rule. The game rule for spawn chunk radius is gone. However, we now have a new command to fill its place, the /force load command, which basically forces whatever chunk you're in to always be permanently loaded, which is a good replacement. So if you had any machinery in the spawn chunks that you are worried about not working anymore, you can force load it. Or if you don't want to use cheats, you can still use the portal and ender pearl chunk loading methods. Now, when loading into a world, the following types of chunks will be force loaded before you join, and those are chunks affected by the force load command, chunks affected by portal activity, and then the next 2 are single player only, which is the Ender Pearl's Throne method, which is interesting. I thought that'd work in multiplayer, but it seems not. Maybe it'd be a toggle or something. And then also a small area around the player. And also one more thing will be loaded on world creation only. Chunks required to assign the global world spawn will be force loaded before the player spawns in. I also wanted to quickly note that the loading screen for your world has changed. The chunks, as you will see, will now reflect the chunks around the player, and there is a new loading bar, which you'll briefly see here because I load really quick. But there you go. Some nice loading screen changes for those who care. There was one more performance enhancement this week that I want to talk about, and that is entity rendering order was improved for significantly better performance, mainly around mob farms. So if you have any big mob farms and you had real FPS issues, this is the change for you. Mojang wanted to note that this will not affect FPS issues coming from things other than entities like high render distances without mini mobs. That is a different issue and will not be solved under this update, I'm afraid. You also wanted to know this change is quite big, so if you notice any issues at all, go let them know on their bug site. I'll leave a link in the description if I remember. There were also a few sound changes this week. The Happy Gas has gotten a sound change, and its noises can now be heard up to 64 blocks away. Don't know exactly how long that was before. The sounds for chests now play at a lower volume. I'm not sure if we're able to hear that, but maybe. I can't tell, honestly. I'd have to listen to the old ones. And then the voice/speech sound source in the settings here is now narrator/voice. There are also more accessibility changes this week. So like I said, it's a big week for accessibility. First of all, before we even get into the other stuff today, show subtitles is now labeled closed captions. So if you're looking for that setting, it's changed names, still functions the same though. And then if we go into controls, you will see that auto jump and then the sneak and sprint toggles have been moved into here. As well as there are a few new settings here. The attack/destroy toggle and the use item/place block toggle. If we turn both those on, and then we go ahead and grab these oak leaves here, I go ahead and right click and don't hold, you'll see that the toggle works and I can now place blocks without holding down right click. And I can do the same for breaking blocks. Now this should also work with using items, which I think means if I get a splash potion of slow falling here on a right click, it should just repeatedly throw, which does work. Now I did come across an issue in the original recording, and it's that I think the attack does not function properly. Because if I toggle and then it doesn't attack again, it tries to break, but it doesn't keep attacking. So I'm not sure if that's a bug or intended or user error. It could be any of those three, honestly. But that is just an interesting thing to note. Let me make sure to turn that off because I did have an issue with that earlier where I left that on and things got a little messy. In mouse settings, you can now invert mouse X as well. So your lefts will be rights and your rights will be left. This is to go along with the inverted Y mouse or Y axis for your mouse, which is already a setting. One more thing here in this accessibilities menu, that's the sprint window. This slider represents how long you have to hit your forward button after hitting it once to activate your sprint. Now, I did have a little test subject earlier, and you guys can see and have probably seen this horse walking around the world throughout the video, and there is new copper horse armor, which I think looks really nice, and you can ignore all the children here. This was a part of the accident I had earlier with my accessibility toggles, but I love this texture. The horse armor looks sick. You got the orange normal copper and then you got the oxidized saddle. I love it so much. Now the copper horse armor, it's pretty basic. It's got an armor toughness of, oh hi guys. It's got an armor toughness of 4 and it has the same loot table chance as iron horse armor. So yeah, if you guys are horse fans, this is for you. But that's about it for those guys. I love you, man. There was one more thing that I wanted to talk about today, and that is a specific bug change that has been plaguing me and all Minecrafters for eons, it feels like. And that is the fact that thunder volume is finally affected by the weather audio setting. Oh my god, thank you, Mojang. I don't know how it took you this long. This has been a bug since apparently 1.7.4. I don't know how it's taken this long to fix, but we are no longer going to be accosted by loud thunder. I can barely hear it, and that's perfect. Oh, there goes that leaf. Well, that is everything in today's snapshot and last week's preview. So now we're fully up to date, and that's all I have to talk about. I'll be back next week with another snapshot, hopefully. We'll see how big that one is. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a smaller one, because we have gotten a lot of new things in the past 2 weeks. The past 3 weeks, even, honestly. Well, I hope you all enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you all next week. And as always, goodbye.